So let's look at the tempo control in the 11 rack. Now when you first turn your 11 rack on, more than likely it'll default to having the tempo light being on and blinking. So tap tempo tuner button. You tap the tap tempo tuner button at quarter note intervals to set the current rig's FX tempo. Time-based effects like delay and tremolo can be set to synchronize with the new tempo. If you want to save the new tempo setting with the current rig, press the save button. And of course, to access the tuner, you just hold the button. Now for the tempo control, of course, you turn the lit control knob to set the rig tempo. Any Amper Effects settings that have a control set to sync to a specific subdivision of rig tempo will lock to this tempo. You press the MIDI to toggle sync of rig tempo to incoming MIDI clock from the MIDI input of the 11 rack on or off, which is right here, of course. Now we can get to our tempo setting by hitting edit back once. You'll probably come to the first page here. There's 4 pages in this menu. And you'll scroll all the way to the 4th page, right where it says tempo. You see that we're at 120 BPM. We can adjust that right here. Let me zoom out and show you with the light blinking. So now we can see the tempo lights blinking, and we can see we're set on 75.6 BPM. You can also see the tempo shown in the 11 rack window in Pro Tools. I can also change the tempo in the 11 rack window in Pro Tools, and the changes will of course be reflected on the rack. And the same holds true for adjusting on the rack and reflected in the window. Here we have a fine control. Click the fine control and you can use the scroll knob to dial in finer adjustments. Once you get to where you want, untick that and continue on changing your other options. Another way you can set the tempo is using tap tempo, where we just tap the tempo button right on the 11 rack. And you'll see the changes reflected here and in the 11 rack window in Pro Tools, if you have that open. So, or if I want it faster, you also have the option of using MIDI to adjust the tempo. Now if we don't want that light blinking, we can turn it off, but that option's not here. So we'll hit edit back, go to our main screen, and then we'll hold edit back for 2 to 3 seconds. So we're on the first page here. We want to scroll down to about the 3rd page. The 2nd page, here's the 3rd page. Knob display action. So we'll hit select, which is SW1. And here we see blink. And we press SW2 to turn the blinking off. And you can quickly and easily turn it right back on anytime you want. Also note, you don't have to go into the tempo menu like we were to use tap tempo. You can do it right from our main screen. And to use the tuner, you hold the button for 2 to 3 seconds. And that of course reflects our tuner on this screen as well as in the 11 rack window. So that is your tuner and tempo functions in the 11 rack. Be sure to put them to good use. One other thing to mention is the tempo light doesn't have to be blinking in order to use tap tempo. You can see here we're at 185. So if we hold edit back 2 seconds, knob display action, select, turn the blinking off, edit back, edit back. We can still adjust the tempo. Tempo is on 212. And another thing I should mention about tempo is if you have Pro Tools open and your 11 rack window up, you can actually lock the tempo of the 11 rack to the session tempo of your Pro Tools session simply by clicking this lock emblem right here. You see right now it's not clicked. Right now I have conductor on in Pro Tools. Nothing's locked. So as soon as I hit the conductor and turn it off, you see nothing changes on the 11 rack. Now if I were to lock it, it immediately goes to 120, which is what's set by the conductor here. Unlock it, it goes to 150. Also, you see that reflected on the 11 rack screen. And I can change the 11 rack tempo right in the tempo section of the transport here. So you can change the tempo in the transport just of course by clicking and holding and dragging up or down. And the changes are reflected on the 11 rack and the 11 rack window right here. You can also of course click and then type in a tempo and hit return, and both screens get updated. Another thing you can do is if you have the session tempo locked to the 11 rack using this lock, if you came here to the 11 rack and adjusted the tempo, you'd notice that the tempo changes on the 11 rack, on the 11 rack screen, and in Pro Tools, which you can see here, and you can see reflected here on the timeline as well. And you can unlock it as well. So to lock it to your session tempo in Pro Tools, you just click the lock. If it's lit up yellow, it means it's locked. If it's not lit up, if the lock itself is yellow, it's not locked. If the lock is black with the yellow background, it is locked.